everyone. A
Okay.
very good afternoon to you. I hope all of you are taking care and staying safe. Thank you so much for joining Chacha 2020. I hope you enjoyed the plenary session. This event, Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, is hosted by National Skill Development Corporation, De Asra Foundation, Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship, and the Nudge Center for Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. I am Meeda from the Nudge, and I will be your MC for the Skill Development and Entrepreneurship event. Through these 3 days, we will be examining many vital questions around skill development and entrepreneurship. These crucial questions include: as COVID-19 spreads across the most vulnerable sections of the economy, what changes in skilling strategies and solutions can help bridge the gap in the economy? We will be looking at, so where would this innovation come from? Would it see us bridging the gap with a scarcity problem solving mindset or an abundance mindset? Will today's linear growth strategies work, or will exponential growth be required? What role can technology and governance play? Will the changes be inclusive and hence sustainable? So we will be examining all of these questions and more in our event. So let us kick off a 3-day journey of learning and interactions with an address by Mr. Praveen Kumar. Mr. Praveen Kumar is an IAS officer from 1987 batch of Tamil Nadu cadre. He is currently serving as Secretary, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India. Prior to this, he has handled various important positions in the state government as well as in the central government, where he was involved in policy formulation and implementation of various public departments. Mr. Praveen Kumar has done his BTech and MTech in metallurgy from IIT Kanpur. Apart from this, he holds postgraduate diplomas in business administration and public administration. We are really glad to have you with us today, sir. Thank you so much for coming. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes,
suppose
sir.
everyone is able to hear you. So
Yes,
good
sir.
afternoon, everyone, and thanks to all the speakers who have accepted to address this 3-day Charcha, a marathon Charcha, which may lead up to some fruitful results for us. And a very special thanks to all the participants who have taken off time and to try to participate in the Charcha and listening to all the panels and all. So in my address, I would like to focus not on what government is doing, that we will be knowing anyway, or rather what government is not doing perhaps. But I would like to place before you some challenges which the skill ecosystem faces. And I will expect this 3-day Charcha to focus on at least some of the challenges and throw us some roadmaps for us to work on. To meet both the challenges which are general skilling system eco challenges and COVID-induced challenges, because a lot of challenges have come in which has been induced by COVID. Now, skilling has been recognized by everyone as one of the important pillars which will help India become a global economy. We always talk that there's a demographic dividend which we have to take, and this dividend is available for a short time only. Basically, what is happening that the growth of the productive population is going to go up only up to 2036. After that, the curve will flatten. So we have a window of 15 years for demographic structure to change to a dependent majority one. So we have to exploit this 15 years so that the dividend we can exploit, because if we don't exploit this large young population is a boon if we use them properly, and is a bane, is very dangerous if they are not utilized properly. So aim of the skilling ministry when it was formed was always to have skilling in speed and in scale, in large scale, so that in short time we can skill a lot of people, do quality skilling to the satisfaction of the industry, and make it aspirational. A lot of progress has happened in the last 6 years. A large ecosystem has been developed. The short-term training in partnership with the industry. Long-term training has also increased in size, almost double in size. A nascent regulatory structure is also taking shape. And some new age skills like Internet of Things, other data mining, etc. have been incorporated both in the long term and short term. But as I said, the challenges remain. I will just list out the challenges for you in this time, the 15-minute time which I have. So some of the major challenges of the system, first is that, very surprising, but demand for farmer skilling in the country is very limited. This looks surprising, one, that why you are saying that demand for farmer skilling is very limited. See, there are a couple of reasons. First is that the labor sector, the economic sector, 80% is informal. Now, being informal, the demand for formal skilling is very limited in the informal sector. I think not more than 3% of the labor employed in informal sector is formally skilled. There what happens, there is a young boy called Chotu who helps the craftsman, and slowly he becomes a craftsman over time. The Chotu culture, which I say, happens in the informal sector. So formal skilling is very limited. Even the formal system, what if you see analyze the data of the firms, more than 70% of the firms are less than 20% size, that less than 20 employees are there in those firms. So what happens, such firms generally don't have the propensity to have skilled or skilled labor. Many reasons, perhaps each of the labor is multi-skilled. So is one thing which we look at, how to train multi-skilled labor. The cost of skilling may go up when the base is small. And of course, the skilled manpower expects a higher wage, so the costs go up. So the smaller firms may not be going for a skilled manpower. Other thing which has happened in the last 20 years is that the share of contract labor has gone up from around 15% in the beginning of the century. It has gone up to almost 26%. Now, in the contract labor, the relationship between the employer and the employee is limited, so the employer doesn't want to invest in the skilling. So one of the challenges is how to increase this demand of the formal skilling, especially in the informal sector. If you're not able to formalize the informal sector, at least increase the demand in the formal skilling. Second, paradoxically, what is happening, the employers are saying that we don't get skilled people. And there's the second thing, the opposite of it. Ideally, you should expect that with so many skilled persons, anyone coming in should get a job. But employers saying more than 50% employees in a survey by Manpower said that we don't get skilled employees. Even those who are skilled, they are not fit enough to work. We have to train them again. So this is a mismatch. Perhaps our recent attempts to work in partnership with the industry may address this situation a bit. But there is a big information asymmetry. See, I am a person who wants to do skilling. I am a class 12 dropout or class 10 dropout. I want to do some skilling. Which area I should do the skilling? Where the jobs are available? Which place I should do the skilling? What kind of skilling I should do? I'm not aware. And the employers are not aware. If they want a plumber, where do I go for a plumber? They're also not aware. So this mismatch, information asymmetry is there. Other thing is that the skill ecosystem in the government system is very, very weak. You see RD department, rural development department, or see the agriculture department. They have foot on the ground, right at the village level, they have people, the block level, the district level. Skilling system doesn't have that kind of manpower there. So it affects a lot of programs of mobilization, counseling, which we like to do at the local level. That person can come and sit and he can be counseled that what is best for him to a psychometric test and all that. That we can't do because our foot is not there on the ground. That is another challenge. And the regulatory structure is very weak here in the skilling ecosystem. We don't have a statutory backed by law, any institution which can regulate the system. Like if a X trainer is training a plumber and a Y trainer is training a plumber, I can't know that whether X is better, Y is better, what is teaching. Now NCVT has come in, but it is to executive order. It's more a voluntary kind of thing where people try to get into the NCVT system and make it acceptable. Over time, perhaps this may become acceptable. So NCVT will become a strong regulator over time when public acceptance of NCVT goes up. But as of now, that is the weakness. A lot of people give training, which is not standard, which is not common. So we don't know what is the thing, what the plumber has learned by training with that X or Y or Z trainer. Also, there is a shortage of trainers and training institutions. Our ecosystem is still not developed to So what we do, we catch X or Y, Z and give them a short capsule to become a trainer. That affects the quality also. Then skilling requirement itself is changing so rapidly. Technological disruption, business disruption is affecting the skilling requirement. You don't know tomorrow what is skills I have today will be available tomorrow. For example, driver. Tomorrow, 10 years from now, driverless cars will become normal. So a driver who is I have a skilled driver, my jobs are gone. It won't be there at all. Even business disruption, like this lockdown is there. A lot of people have got into habit of cutting their own hair. I don't have much hair, so I don't have the problem, but are cutting their own hair. So after the lockdown gets over, I may get used to, I may happy with my act of cutting my hair, so I may not go to a barber at all in future. The same thing happened when this safety measure came in. Now everyone shaves themselves. No one goes to the barber for shaving. So that market is totally gone. Similarly, the market for hair cutting may gone. Similarly, other markets may go away. Some other markets may come in also. Like the local your grocer may start home delivery. You don't know. May start home delivery because he has seen that during lockdown, home delivery is the preferred mode of delivering safely goods without being affected by virus. So a lot of these disruptions keep on occurring. It's not like education where the basic education sector remains same over a period of 10 years, 20 years, and the change is slowly comes in. Here the change may be very rapid. So what you learn today may not be available there tomorrow in the market at all. And nature of business is also changing with the Uber, Urban Clap, the gig economy. So if I'm just trained as a driver, I may have to have additional skills to act as a Uber driver. I should know how to negotiate the Google Map, how to interact with the customer, how to make digital payments. All those things has to be added to the skilling. And the final challenge remains the skilling is still not aspirational in India. All of us who are participating in this seminar, whether speaking or listening, I think the last choice will be for the children or themselves or their brothers, depending on the age, that I'll make him a plumber or I'll make him a Uber driver. Everyone wants to do BA, MA, BTech, MTech, whatever. Well, everyone wants to go to higher education. But India is a country who thinks higher of people who work through their brains instead of those who work through hands. Even today, a Uber driver may be earning more than a BPO employee. But in the social scale, the BPO employee thinks I am above the Uber driver, even though I am earning more. This is a major challenge, how to make skill aspiration. As the preferred, see, if I don't want to go for research or higher education, why should I go for higher education at all? I should be going for skilling. I mean, that spirit has to come. Now, COVID has caused more challenges. I'm not talking about courses which have got delayed, apprenticeship which has got delayed. So that will be rectified once the system normalizes with some delay and some fast track activity. We will be able to come on board by the start of the next academic year. But there are more fundamental challenges. See, now the COVID has impacted the economy badly. Even the GDP growth projections, which was around 5% in February, have reduced to 1 to 2% now. The unemployment is said to have grown 4 times from February up to 27% is the latest figure I read today. And some sectors have been impacted very badly. Tourism, hospitality, they will take time. People are not going to travel much. Aviation, very badly. And some have minimal impact. Some have benefited also, like healthcare, pharma, they have benefited also. So demand of labor demand side is going to be affected very badly because may not have so many jobs. Second thing, the labor market itself has changed. All those migrants we have been hearing and seeing going back. Now many of the migrants are not going to come back, at least for 1 year or 2 year time. I have heard people saying, कि 2 रोटी कम खाएंगे, यहीं रहेंगे, घर पर रहेंगे, नहीं जाना हमको दिल्ली को. So they have felt that they have been treated badly in the big city, which they have contributed to it. Now they are skilled, but the skills are not compatible to what is jobs available in the home states, in the home districts. I may be a good factory employee, but there's no factory in my home district. That's why I went to the city. So they will have to be reskilled. New job opportunities have to be found in their home districts. Even those who have stayed back, as I said, some of the sectors have been impacted. So they will find their jobs are not there at all. So they may not get jobs in those areas. And even there where the sectors have not been impacted, what I expect the employers to shift slowly towards automation. What is going to happen to take care of a future impact like this COVID? The dependency on labor will be, whoever can afford will try to reduce the dependency on labor. We will go for automation. So job demand is going to go down badly, both for the reasons of the economy and both because of the COVID, people planning for COVID kind of a situation in the future. Then, so we need our systems of training, etc., to change to address these issues. But our skill institutional capacity is very weak. It cannot so fast change over to address this situation. Other thing, what will happen that this COVID impacted behavioral norms is going to remain. The virus may go away in 6 months, go away in 1 year, but the behavioral norms which has been put in as a precaution towards virus is going to remain for at least 1 or 2 years, like social distancing. Crowded classrooms we can't have. Crowded job melas we can't have. You know, the counseling where everyone face to face is a very common thing in skilling system. You have to work with hand to know face to face. So we have to design online substitutes for each of the activities in the value chain. Mobilization, counseling, training, up till the employment part, job melas, we have to do all this. Now, classes also we can't have 100% online substitutes because it is skills. It's not history, geography, or physics where you can have everything given online. You are hands-on. You have to finally learn to drive the lathe, how to operate the lathe, or how operate the machine, drilling machine. Except for computer-based classes, all other things will require a practical experience. But a lot of things can be given through online. And the last small component can be kept as a. So you have to analyze each course, to what extent we can go online, and to what extent will remain when face-to-face kind of training. And when we talk going online, we should keep in mind that the clientele here, the stakeholders here, are students from the subaltern class who don't have laptop or a PC or an iPhone or a Samsung S, whatever is now the S20 or whatever is there now. Don't have that. The maximum they will have a 3,000 to 5,000 smartphone at the best case scenario to see a WhatsApp and all that. So our online programs can't be just imported from other places and imposed here. It has to be designed for such a clientele. These are major challenges and requiring a lot of money and a lot of time. So I think efficient and effective answers are both efficient, cost-wise and time-wise, and effective answers are required. We while in the government we are doing a lot of thinking on how to go about it, but I always feel that crowdsourcing is the best way to get things. So with so many people participating, I see that how many other, I think 100, I saw a number of 100 or something participants as of now, and 3 days more will be there. Some solutions will come in. I'm hoping so. And so thanks a lot for giving the opportunity to pose before you. I think I'm just beyond the limit. I'm just in the limit, 15 minutes time. Thanks a lot. I'm told there's no question answer session, but anyway, I'll be following you anonymously this charcha. I have asked for to be allowed to be listen to the entire charcha anonymously whenever I have time. I'll be doing that. And I hope at the end of it, I get some good solutions or at least a roadmap or some direction how to go ahead or to meet these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the opening address and for shedding light on the challenges in the skill development sector and the impact of COVID-19 on the same. It was really nice to listen to you, sir, and we're really glad that you could be a part of this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm leaving formally now. So I won't be visible, but I'll be there. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So let us now proceed to a keynote address by Mr. Ajay Chaudhary, who is the chairman of Electronics Sector Skills Council and the founder of HCL. So one of the 6 founder members of HCL, Mr. Ajay Chaudhary, is currently the chairman of the board of governors of IIT Naya Raipur and the chairman of Electronic Sector Skills Council of India. He is a Padma Bhushan awardee for his consistent contribution in building the IT industry of the nation, besides several accolades received for his key role in championing the cause of domestic Indian IT market. Mr. Chaudhary has been involved in going to this society through his charitable trust called Swayam. Besides, he is also the board member of the Population Foundation of India and a trustee of Save Life Foundation. And he plays an important advisory role in advocacy efforts. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. We request you to take over now with the keynote address.
Thank you, Medha.
Thank you, sir.
Well, COVID has created a lot of uncertainty, as we really don't know for sure when and how we will go forward in the next 6 to 12 months. We could see a W curve where there could be recurrence and lockdowns. So we will have to learn to live with it. There is no real option. Things can only change once we are sure of a cure and a vaccine. So people will be very careful, and therefore, if you look at, even if a TV fails at home, will you allow the service engineer to enter the house? Will you, for example, go to a restaurant? Will you easily go shopping the way you used to? And will you travel in a taxi, Uber, or Ola? Those are all the questions that are all staring at us as we look at this environment. Now, the new normal is going to be a low-touch way of working. So you'll have to adopt new habits, new regulations, travel restrictions, and also hygiene restrictions. So this will need new skills as technology will pervade the whole system. And as borders will be closed or opened very carefully, all countries will need to look at supply chains more widely distributed. Till now, everybody had pretty much one source, and that was China. So India is already changing, and we've seen that from the announcements made by the Prime Minister, where we are really started talking about local, but with being part of a global supply chain. But that supply chain must essentially include India, which it did not till now. So those people working in industries that are in severe downturn will have to move to another domain. So reskilling will be needed. And so the reskilling training, business will also scale, and you will see a huge spike there. Healthcare and wellness will lead the growth, and maybe pharma. But new skills are needed to use technology and be contactless. Telemedicine, for example, will finally happen. It's being talked about for many years. And doctors and new professionals at the rural end will be needed to support this. So we need to skill those people to actually create a new model of delivering medical services. Lots of jobs will be lost. So all aspirants will have to skill up and then compete for scarce jobs, okay? So companies will reduce, as a matter of fact, full-time jobs and move to freelancers and contract people. And this so-called gig economy will definitely come into being. Now, in this gig economy, what do you really need to do? You need to create skills by selling yourself and building a business around you as a person. So in a manner, new skills are needed, and you need to be in a manner like a micro entrepreneur, running your own business single-handedly. Very tough time ahead for new job entrants also. What will be needed is to add more skills to your portfolio if you want to enter the job market. And a lot of learning and skilling will be required through online sources. And you'll have to be more job ready than ever before. You have to add skills like communications, great capability for doing video interviews, online tests, and you need to learn and skill up to knowing more global languages. Because if you want to be that part of that global supply chain, you need to know some languages too. So if you come with some of these additional skills, you may have a better chance to get a new job. As manufacturing moves from China, we will need new skills. And electronics actually will benefit a lot because electronics is huge in China. And secondly, electronics in India has got priority. And a lot of new benefits have been given by the government for electronics. So as a result, you will see that you will need to have newer skills as we move forward. The main skill that will change and will have to be adopted by many people will be design-led manufacturing. And if we just do manufacturing, we will have lower value added. But if you do design-led manufacturing, you'll have higher value added. So I think that's really the major change I feel will happen. And also, Industry 4.0 will be needed. Now, what does that mean for people who are normal manufacturing engineers? How do they get to those skills that are needed for Industry 4.0? And what new skills are needed is a lot of IT. So you will need to understand data analytics, big data, robotics and automation, AI, IoT, and process digitization across all the business value chain. So these are new skills that will be required. And therefore, we have to gear ourselves up for these new skills in manufacturing. As I feel more and more automation will happen in the country. And as movements will be restricted, it will lead to collaborative design and development across borders and across internationally also. So new skills will be needed, like using virtual reality. And for example, one of the startups that I have been mentoring, they've actually created this whole model of architects working from anywhere in the world to be able to collaboratively work with a particular software toolkit. And that way they can work together. So this collaborative working with virtual reality will become something that will come up in a big way. And so therefore you need new skills on how to operate and learn these new skills of virtual reality. Now, of course, many similar things are likely to happen. And I don't want to give a very, very long lecture. I'll give a pretty short lecture because I feel that what I want to say can be said in a few words and some important issues. So development institutions also will need to adapt to this new reality. And money will be scarce. I am involved with 2 development institutions, Population Foundation and Save Life Foundation. And what we are finding is that we were actually working on trying to get funding from a lot of public sector units. And suddenly, all of it has come to a standstill. And then we discovered that the reason for it is that all public sectors are actually contributing in a very big way to PM CARES. So if they're giving a lot of their funding to PM CARES from their CSR funding, we are unlikely to get very much out of there. Therefore, the only 2 options that will be available for funding will be, first, private organizations who have large CSR funding. But you have to watch out there also, a lot of them give funding in areas that they have already decided. So if the CSR committee has already decided that they're going to invest in women empowerment, or they're going to invest in education, or they're going to invest in rural, that's where their monies will go. So I think you will have to find the right private organizations who are working in the domain that you are in. And one key thing will be that one thing we've noticed that the FCRA types of donation monies are not stopping. As a matter of fact, some of them have told us in PFI, for example, is that please don't fire anybody. We want all of them to stay and we want to continue supporting you. So that's good news. So I think that's something that's very positive. Now, if we want to work in rural areas, we need new skills. And we need to learn how to do contactless working and technology-based working. So you need to really learn how to not go to a particular place, but work remotely and also communicate remotely. So if you have to communicate remotely, you need to learn skills like working on multimedia. Multimedia, for example, I mean, you need to work on many areas using, for example, TV, community radio, phones, voice-based response systems, multilingual chatbots. Those are the kind of things that you will need to learn to do. And therefore, these are completely new skills. Fortunately, for example, in Population Foundation, we've actually been adopting a lot of these technologies for a long time because I have been actually pushing them ahead of time and saying that please go after very high use of technology so that it will get you much further. And therefore, they actually came up with this whole program of Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hoon, and some of you must have seen it. Inside that, we have all these multimedia platforms that we are using. And we've just started a chatbot about a year ago, and that is in English, and that we are going to convert soon to multilingual. So those are the kind of new skills of communications that the development institutions will have to learn and get their people to learn. There has been a huge impact of COVID on the innovation engine, and that's a very interesting area since I'm very deeply involved with startups. Here, government, academia, startups have worked together in the last 40 days to create an absolutely amazing products. Okay, and this is something that we can be very proud of in India. So for example, I've been working on a project to create a ventilator with IIT Kanpur, and we did that in flat 5 weeks. And it's now going into manufacturing. Similarly, I have another startup whom I'm working with in IIT Delhi, where IIT Delhi government, all of us came together to actually carry forward. So anyway, I like to end up here by saying that a new model of skills will be needed, which is more emotional intelligence, digital literacy, creativity, self-study skills, ecological mindset, attention management, and concentration and awareness, because you will be overloaded with information. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the keynote address on skilling for the future. Your insights were very helpful, and all of us learned a lot from it on how to prepare ourselves better for the future. Thank you so much for taking time and coming to Charcha 2020 with us. Thank you so much for your talk, sir.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.